Hello and welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Recently I picked up the Lord of the Rings the card game from Fantasy Flight Games. It's something that I've been meaning to try for years, and for one reason or another I just never got around to it. I am very much enjoying the game, but I felt there were some limitations with the core box. You couldn't make 4 full decks, your deck building options were fairly limited, the missions were fairly generic, and there was a lack of what I would call main characters. There were no hobbits, some of the included characters didn't appear in Tolkien's works at all, and the greatest crime of all, no Boromir. While I felt there was a fair amount of game in the box for the price, it was clear that if you liked the gameplay even a bit, you were going to need to make more purchases to get the most out of it. My initial thoughts were that I would like to get the Saga trilogy, starting with the Fellowship of the Ring. That way I would be able to play less generic missions, using more recognisable characters from the books. However, I also felt I needed a larger card pool for decent deck building options. In particular, I felt that the tactics sphere was quite weak, using only what was available in the core box. Fantasy Flight Games do offer 4 starter decks: Dwarves of Durin, Elves of Lorien, Defenders of Gondor and Riders of Rohan, and I was quite interested in picking up 1 or 2 of those, especially Defenders of Gondor as it includes stupid sexy Boromir. However, these decks appear to be all but sold out in the UK, with no clear indication of if or when they might get a reprint. Nevertheless, after a lot of hunting, I found a small online retailer that had 1 copy of the Elves of Lorien starter deck left in stock, so I snatched it up, and today I thought I would take a quick look at it. It comes in a small blister pack with a very serious Celeborn on the front, and on the back it says, "This 82 card starter deck for the Lord of the Rings the card game contains a ready-to-play starter deck featuring the Wood Elves of Middle-earth. Take advantage of their nimble grace to adapt to any challenge and stay 1 step ahead of danger. The Elven Heroes, Celeborn, Galadriel and Haldir. Additional Sylvan-themed cards that can be used to augment and customize any deck." All good stuff, but I don't think this is quite as clear as it could be about what you are actually getting here. If you read it quickly, you could be forgiven for thinking you are getting an 82 card starter deck, plus 3 Elven Heroes, plus additional cards. However, this pack contains only 82 cards total. What you are actually getting is a 53 card starter deck comprising exactly 50 cards, which is the minimum quantity for a legal deck, plus the heroes Celeborn, Galadriel and Haldir. And then you get an additional 29 cards. One of those is the hero Elrond, which is such a big inclusion, both in terms of him being a popular character, but also in terms of him being mechanically a superb hero in the game. I can't believe it isn't mentioned on the packaging anywhere. Inside the pack, besides the cards, you also get this handy leaflet. It explains how the pack includes a pre-generated deck comprising cards marked with a small star so you can easily identify them. It then goes on to give some advice on how to use this deck. It talks about many of the cards having responses that trigger when they come into play, but the deck has ways in which you can return the cards to your hand and then replay them, triggering those responses over and over throughout the game. There are also some warnings. For example, each hero is from a different sphere of influence, so getting the right resources at the right time may not always be easy. Also, elven allies tend to have a single hit point, which can result in them being easily wiped out by effects from treachery cards. Then, at the end of the book, after the credits, we have the Wood Elf starter deck list. This is the 53 card pre-generated deck. The booklet is missing a list of the other 29 cards that come in this set, although all cards from the pack have an identifying leaf symbol next to their collector number. Before we look briefly at the included cards, I did want to point out something that is more of a comment on card games in general rather than anything specific to Lord of the Rings. When you buy a product like this, you have to temper your excitement regarding how much you are getting in terms of physical components and unique elements. Sure, you are getting a big wedge of cards that will give you loads of build options to get excited about, but you aren't actually getting a lot of different cards to get excited about. With the exception of 4 hero cards and 2 Gandalf cards, every card in this pack is presented in triplicate. That means that you are only getting 31 unique cards, and 3 of those are already in the base set. So if, like me, you get excited about getting new cards with new art and new abilities, you may be a touch disappointed that you only have 28 in this box. But of course that is the nature of the game. You can have up to 3 of any card in your deck, and I would be the first to complain if you didn't get 3 of everything in the pack. And in fact, I am going to complain about exactly that right now. For some reason, the only non-hero card that isn't presented in triplicate is Gandalf. The starter deck includes just 2 copies. I complained in my previous video that there were only 8 Gandalf ally cards in the core set, which meant there weren't enough for 3 Gandalfs per deck in a 4-player game. Well, now I have 2 more Gandalfs, taking my total to 10, and I still don't have enough for 3 Gandalfs per player. It feels like a strange choice. I realise there may be a point where you have a much larger, better pool of cards, and Gandalf isn't an instant pick for everyone, but at this stage, I don't know why you would want to leave home without him. Overall, I was happy with my new wedge of cards, and because of the edge-to-edge art, I have decided to sleeve my decks, so into Mayday Premium card sleeves they all went. I've already spent more on sleeves than I have on some actual games, not something I tend to do. The starter deck itself is rather fun. It represents the hit and run ambush tactics of the elves as they drop into play, do something useful, and then disappear into the trees. The 3 heroes are an interesting choice. Celeborn is superb. He's a leadership hero with high stats and an ability that buffs Sylvan heroes the turn they arrive. As you are going to be constantly playing allies, retrieving them, and then playing them again, you can instantly see how that's going to be really effective. His high threat of 11 is the biggest issue. Galadriel is an odd duck. She is a spirit hero who is only bringing willpower to the party, and she isn't allowed to quest, attack, or defend. I can see that being a problem on a solo run of the Escape from Dol Guldur mission from the core set, as you would effectively be left with only one hero if one of her companions becomes the prisoner. However, Galadriel has some really useful abilities. Allies you control don't exhaust to quest on the round they enter play, which is huge because when combined with Celeborn, you are getting buffed allies that can be used multiple times. Also, she has an action that lets her exhaust to draw a card and reduce threat by 1. As you aren't going to be using her for much else, you are probably going to use that most turns, at least at the start of the game, which is going to keep your threat level pretty static. The 3rd hero is Haldir from the Lore Sphere, and I'm not too sold on him. He has decent attack and he is ranged, but he has little defense and only 3 hit points. His special ability lets him ping enemies that aren't engaged with you if you don't engage an enemy that round. That's often only going to be doing 1 or 2 damage, and I feel it really needs some buffs that aren't in this deck. If you could get Bow of the Galadrim on Haldir, he suddenly becomes an attack 5 assassin, and things look up. But the bow is a tactics card and there are no tactics resources to play it. The deck itself is very heavy on allies, with 11 unique allies comprising 27 of the 50 cards. 2 Gandalfs, 3 Defenders of Nath, 3 Galadrim Minstrels, 2 Galadriel's Handmaidens, 3 Greenwood Archers, 2 Henemarth Riversong, 2 Mirkwood Runners, 3 Nath Guides, 2 Orphans, 2 Sylvan Refugees, and 2 Sylvan Trackers. 6 of these allies have responses that trigger when they come into play. They all benefit from Galadriel's ability, even Gandalf, and with the exception of Gandalf, they all benefit from Celeborn's ability. I'm not going through all of these cards in detail, but some of these I think are really strong. Orphan can return Sylvan allies from the discard pile, the Handmaidens reduce threat, and the Sylvan Tracker will heal 1 damage on each Sylvan character that readies during the refresh phase. You just have to be aware that Galadriel is not Sylvan. The weakest inclusions for me are the Sylvan Refugees, who can add 2 willpower when questing, but will up and leave as soon as any character leaves play. Considering one of the biggest elements of this deck is returning cards to your hand, the Refugees don't stick around for long. And while Henemarth Riversong has a good ability, as he can exhaust to look at the top of the encounter deck, he's already present in the core set. Yes, I understand these decks are supposed to stand alone, requiring no other products to be functional, but even so I probably would have rather seen something else. He does form part of a nifty combo with Haldir though, which we will see momentarily. The deck also contains 10 attachments, 2 Lembas, 3 Nenya, 3 Olorien, and 2 Wingfoot. Lembas is a pretty decent heal for a hero that also readies them. I like that you can play it as an attachment and sit on it, so you don't have to hold back resources for when you do need it. Lorien makes Sylvan allies cheaper to play, which makes sense to include in this deck. Wingfoot can only be played with Haldir, as he's the only hero ranger, but it does mean that you have the chance to use Haldir to quest and either attack or defend. Basically, you have to predict what one of the encounter cards drawn that turn will be, and if you are right, Haldir will ready. In conjunction with Henemarth Riversong's ability to scry the encounter deck, you can confidently get 2 uses out of Haldir each turn. Nenya is the most important attachment here. It gives Galadriel a lore resource icon, making it easier to play your lore cards, and you can exhaust Nenya with Galadriel to add her will to another character's will until the end of the phase. That means Galadriel can effectively quest without committing to the quest, which will also protect her from any effects that strike questing heroes. Finally, the deck includes 13 events: 2 A Test of Will, 2 Daeron's Runes, 2 Elrond's Council, 3 Famed Voices, 2 Host of Galadriel, and 2 The Tree People. A Test of Will is a duplicate of a card from the core set, but it's very useful as it cancels when revealed effects on encounter cards. This can protect very squishy allies from damage-causing effects. Elrond's Council is fantastic, as it gives one hero a willpower boost while also lowering your threat by 3. Daeron's Runes is just a way to sift cards so you can find important cards like Nenya more easily. The last 3 cards all play with the concept of returning cards to your hand, either to gain a benefit or to immediately bring them back into play, triggering their when played responses. It is a really fun deck. Probably a bit more tricksy than anything you are going to see in the core box, requiring a slightly better grasp of the game mechanisms. And of course, you also get some additional cards in the pack. Interestingly, these cards are not for tinkering with the pre-generated deck, but for wider use across the whole game. For example, most of the additional cards are from the Tactics Sphere, which you couldn't even use with the 3 heroes in the pre-generated deck at all. You will have noticed that in the pre-generated deck, sometimes only 2 of a particular card were used. Host of Galadriel, for example. So the first 10 of the additional cards are the extras to ensure you have 3 of each. 1 Sylvan Tracker, 1 Sylvan Refugee, 1 Orofin, 1 Mirkwood Runner, 1 Wingfoot, 1 Lembas, 1 Host of Galadriel, 1 The Tree People, 1 Elrond's Council, and 1 Daeron's Runes. You then get 3 each of 6 new cards: Vilya, Bow of the Galadriel, Rumil, Galadon Archer, Hands Upon the Bow, and Pursuing the Enemy. Most of these cards continue the themes of the pre-generated deck. The 2 allies have responses that trigger when you play them. Rumil can be particularly devastating if you have a lot of ranged characters. Pursuing the Enemy is another card that lets you return a Sylvan ally to your hand. In this case, the benefit is dealing 1 damage to each enemy engaged with 1 player of your choice. Hands Upon the Bow is good, but becomes great if you have a character armed with the Bow of the Galadriel. Your character is going to be attacking into the staging area with +3 damage. With Haldir, for example, that would be a Strength 6 attack, enough to instantly kill many enemies. Considering you can use Hands Upon the Bow outside of the combat phase, you can snipe enemies before they ever have a chance to do anything. Vilya is exclusively for Elrond. It gives him the spirit resource icon and lets him play the top card of your deck for free. Finally, of course, you get the best additional card, the hero Elrond. Elrond is a lore hero and he has a really high threat value of 13, but that is because he's a beast, with 3 willpower and defense, 2 attack and 4 hit points. He has a response that boosts any healing effect from other cards, and when playing allies you can use his resources for any sphere of influence. Honestly, I think he's a better fit for the pre-generated deck than Haldir. You would just need to remove a few other cards from the deck like Wingfoot and add in some copies of Vilya. You would also need to be wary of your incredibly high starting threat of 33. But that is your lot. I've already ended up talking longer about this than I intended to, and there's a lot more I could have said. But before I summarise, there is one big thing that has caused me some serious concern about this particular starter deck and how it interacts with the core game campaign, and I do think I should mention it. When you play through the core game, you get an objective ally who accompanies you. That ally, called Mendor, is a Sylvan, and should they ever be removed from play, you instantly lose. But this Elves of Lorien deck is built on the concept of purposefully removing your Sylvan allies from play, and the Host of Galadrim card pulls every Sylvan you have back into your hand. By my understanding of the rules, as soon as Mendor is returned to your hand, you lose, making it impossible to use this deck with the core campaign. I've looked online for clarification on this, and I can't find a definitive answer. Maybe someone knows the true ruling and can share it in the comments. Regardless, the fact there appears to be this massive clash between the design of the core campaign and the starter decks that were created for new players who are probably looking for decks to play through the core campaign appears to be a huge oversight and miscalculation on the part of Fantasy Flight Games. Regardless, ultimately, I am happy with my purchase here. I like a lot of the cards this adds to my pool, and there weren't as many core set duplicates as there could have been, so I think the value is there. I've also managed to get some more big name characters from the books, which makes me happy, even if Boromir wasn't one of them. And that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.